I think it does a disservice to both sides if the court weighs in on public policy like this. The courts are decided to interpret the Constitution and the constitutionality of laws, not create public policy.
That is the president of the Family Research Council, Tony Perkins, on CBS News Face the Nation, discussing same-sex marriage as our Supreme Court prepares to hear arguments over its constitutionality. Welcome back to America's Forum. The court will hear arguments on two related issues. First, whether same-sex couples have a constitutional right to marry, or can states continue to define marriage as the union of one man and one woman. The second issue is this: whether states that currently don't allow same-sex marriages must use what's called full faith and credit, recognize marriages performed in other states. For more on this story, we're pleased to be welcomed by the judicial analyst to focus on the family, Bruce Hausknecht. Bruce connects with us from Colorado Springs this morning. Bruce, your take on what is at stake tomorrow in the court as the justices hear this argument?
Well, there's a lot of things at stake. Number one is the traditional definition of marriage and what that means for the family and for children. The other thing is what does it mean for the Constitution and the 14th Amendment in particular, and who has the right, in the third instance, to define marriage? Is it the states, is it the voters, or is it 9 members of a court? So we've got all 3 of those issues at stake tomorrow.
And mindful of that, while court decisions seemingly are based on law, it is impossible to separate public opinion. And in the courtroom of public opinion, if you will, Bruce, it would appear that situations have changed. There has been apparently an increase in support for gay marriage. How much do you think politics and polls will play into the decision tomorrow by the United States Supreme Court?
Well, I think you have some justices on the liberal side of that bench who always put their finger in the air and try to detect which way public opinion is blowing, because they are living constitutionalists, which means basically they interpret the Constitution in light of not what the founders thought or the drafters of the 14th Amendment, but what society and what 9 justices on the Supreme Court think ought to be the law, ought to be the constitutional provisions right now. And on the other hand, we have 4 solid conservative judicial philosophy type justices who look at the original meaning of the 14th Amendment or at the plain text of it to begin with, before they get to the original meaning. And so you have this clash of judicial philosophies on the bench. And the public opinion should have nothing to do with what the interpretation of the 14th Amendment really is.
As you were characterizing the court, there seems to be a situation where a lot of folks who look where this decision comes down to believe that Justice Anthony Kennedy will cast the deciding vote. Do you share that assessment that he would be, quote, the swing vote between the liberal and conservative constituencies there on the high court?
I think that's the conventional wisdom, and I would agree with that, unless the court somehow deals with the issue on a procedural note. And I don't see that happening. But if there was a decision to reject the case on a procedural issue like standing or something like that, it may not be Kennedy. But if they get to the substantive constitutional issue of what does the 14th Amendment say about marriage, I expect another 5-4 decision with Justice Kennedy writing that opinion. Just based on what he did a couple of years ago in the Windsor case, he seems to have his own idea about the 14th Amendment, and he ends up as the senior justice on that side writing those liberal opinions.
Well, we will have to see what happens. Of course, the case heard tomorrow, but then there will be time for the court to reflect, to discuss, and to issue those aforementioned opinions. Bruce Hausknecht from Focus on the Family joining us this morning from Colorado Springs. Bruce, we thank you very, very much for your time.
My pleasure.
And we will keep our eye on this as the arguments are heard tomorrow in the high court. And America's Forum is coming right back.